breaking news to start with, as a dangerous heat wave has now turned deadly. The number of people killed so far, hard to believe, highly disturbing, and something we have never before seen in this province.
Dozens of people in the Vancouver area of Western Canada have died in an unprecedented heat wave.
And to have historically high temperatures, the hottest temperature we've ever had on record.
Dozens of people have died in Canada amidst this unprecedented heat wave.
It's very clear that fossil fuel driven climate change is causing this. And we know, unfortunately, that if we don't take urgent action, it's only going to get worse, with parts of the world becoming uninhabitable.
What the hell? Today, the toll from the fires themselves began to be counted. 2 deaths have been reported in the devastated village of Lytton.
It's a small, rural, Indigenous, low-income community, and we're at the spear point of climate change, but it's coming for everybody. We're the canary in the coal mine.
So I'd been doing, the pipeline protests. I'd been signing petitions. I'd been calling MPs and things like that for so long. I'd been volunteering, and I just never quite found my place. And when my nephew was born, I suddenly had this little human whose very existence depended on whether we could mitigate for climate change. And so my climate grief became overwhelming and so hard to deal with. And then one day I went to the Heading for Extinction talk by Extinction Rebellion Vancouver, and people there were saying the things that I was thinking, and they were, open to talking about it, and they also really wanted to do something about it. And I really realized that action was, as they say, the antidote to grief.
Well, I joined Extinction Rebellion because of the idea that it's not just about heroic acts of civil disobedience, it's about joining as a collective and disrupting the roads and the bridges in the city to wake the society up and to wake the city and the country up to a national debate that we need to have about where the country is headed as a society.
Well, I was listening to a radio broadcast a couple of years ago by Chris Hedges, who is a Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist who's done a lot of coverage of war zones. And he was talking about the imminent collapse of society, basically, because of climate crisis and other crises that were all converging. And I was going, God, this is just even worse than I thought. And he said, but there's one hope. That's that the people rise up and rebel on the streets. And I thought, yeah, right, that'll happen. And just a couple of days later, I was at a rally for the Wet'suwet'en, and someone handed me a piece of paper that said Extinction Rebellion. And I said, oh shit, this is it. This is it. It's about extinction. It's about rebellion. And so I was all in, and I've been with Extinction Rebellion ever since.
Around 150 people have taken to the bridge. They've been there now for a number of hours.
The protests are part of a global network of demonstrations known as the Extinction Rebellion.
Protesters taking over Wall Street. They climbed the Charging Bull.
Protesters in cities around the world are demanding government action on climate change.
Today, we're saying that we are not cooperating anymore with that system that's asking us to destroy each other and our children and our future.
Scientists from around the world are telling us that we have a real possibility that if we do not act now, we will hit irreversible tipping points that we cannot come back from. That means that we are the last generation of people who have a chance at fixing this thing. That's insane. That is lunacy. That's our reality. So I joined Extinction Rebellion because we have to take action. And I'm tired of signing petitions and going to marches and waiting and waiting and waiting for governments to do the right thing. Our governments have never treated this emergency like an emergency. They have repeatedly failed to act and take the necessary actions at the scale that is required, despite having just witnessed what emergency response looks like with the COVID-19 pandemic. And we know throughout our history that governments have responded to emergencies like the Second World War with everything they've got. If we do not handle this, if we do not take this on right now, we don't have a chance to fix it later.
Albert Einstein once said that those who have the privilege to know have a responsibility to act. And that's something very important when it comes to getting arrested. We're not getting arrested because it's a tactic. We're getting arrested because we're faced with a regime that's facilitating a mass extermination project. And as Thoreau once said, the only place for a moral person during times of radical criminality by our governments is in prison. So we're doing it because it's the right thing to do. When you're faced with a government that is facilitating genocide, which is what the climate emergency is, considering that 2 degrees are now locked in, the only place for a moral person to be now is in prison. And so it's not really a tactic, it's what we do because everything else has failed.
When we as Extinction Rebellion sit down in the road, we are breaking the law in the most non-violent way possible. Simply sitting down in the road and refusing to move. But the impact of that is so much greater because you are demonstrating that this relationship between citizens and their government, the relationship that is based on governments keeping citizens safe, the fact that they are failing to do that means this relationship is null and void. When we sit down and break the law, it is demonstrating that I don't want to participate in this injustice anymore. I don't want to support a government that is willing to let billions of people die.
Getting arrested is sort of like going to the dentist. It's really not that bad. It's not pleasant. It's not pleasant being handcuffed or riding in a paddy wagon or any of the other parts of being arrested. But you're doing it because you made a decision to do it, and you made a decision to do it because it's necessary.
When I got arrested, it actually wasn't planned. My role at the action was, in fact, arrest support. But we were being moved off the street so quickly, and there were so many new people that were waiting for something to happen, and I realized, okay, this is the moment for me to sit down. I also knew that I couldn't be asking other people to get arrested unless I myself was willing to be arrested. So for me, it was a pretty straightforward procedure. I sat down, I was told that I would be arrested if I didn't move. I was carried off, I was handcuffed. I wasn't afraid. I felt that there were many people watching. I felt that the police were respectful and gentle. It didn't take very long. And there was a feeling of rightness in doing it as I was doing it, unlike anything I've ever felt before.
I decided to get arrested because the other actions that I'd been taking for years, like going to rallies and marches where you start at one place and you end up at another and then you all go home, weren't working. They were absolutely having no effect.
My experience with getting arrested was really a good experience. And I recognize that's a really privileged thing for me to say because my experience was pretty safe. But when I sat down on the pavement and I knew in my heart that what I was demonstrating was withdrawing my consent from this toxic system, withdrawing my consent from the government that is perpetuating these laws of injustice. I was calm. I felt good about it. I still feel good about it.
Yeah, I've been arrested 7 times now, and I'm likely facing imprisonment. And the main reason I got arrested was because, and this is what I would say to anyone who's thinking about getting arrested, is it's not about you. And getting arrested is not a consumer product. The reason why it's important to get arrested is because we're part of a community of struggle. And we need to get arrested because that's what's necessarily required to protect our rights and liberties. And it just comes with the rights that we have. We have civic duties now to break small laws because the government is breaking the biggest law by facilitating the destruction of the country.
I think that if you're a person who has a lot of privilege, like I see myself, I have, my white privilege, I'm cisgendered, and I just know that police are likely to treat me better. I think that other people like me also have this opportunity to put our privilege on the line and really highlight the fact that the institutions that are out there that are supposed to protect us are not doing their job. And so when more of us stand up to those institutions and show that we're willing to put our bodies and ourselves on the line for this thing that we're so, so passionate about, it just brings more attention to the cause and brings more people along with us.
I've come to realize that unless people are willing to be arrested, we're not making our point strongly enough. That the sacrifice of arrest it stands for something. When your average person like me is willing to have police put handcuffs on them, it's a symbol of sacrifice. And it's really the only way that we will get the attention of the media and the general public.
People often ask me, well, gridlocks and roadblocks aren't really my thing. And my response is, again, it's not about you. It's about causing a national debate in society. So if 1,000 people are getting arrested in the streets of Vancouver and Toronto and other major cities in October, you're going to provoke a national debate. And that's what's necessarily required in order for us to start thinking about what needs to be done to address the climate emergency.
I would encourage other people to get arrested. Obviously, considering your own circumstances and what is right for you. But if there's a possibility that that's something that you could do, please consider it. Because if thousands of us take to the streets and sit down in the road, they can't arrest us all. And if thousands and thousands of people are willing to get arrested, it further demonstrates that the problem is not the people. The problem is the law. The problem is the injustice. And again, we are running out of time. This has to happen now.
We're living at a moment in history. When people read books about, this time, the 2020s, this is going to be the moment. Did we take the steps that we needed to make this dramatic change that our society needs? Or did we sit idly by as we descended into climate chaos? If we don't do it now, we're never going to have another chance.
Well, it's time to rebel and enter into civil resistance now, because anything else will result in us being the most hated generation in human history.
The time to act was yesterday, but the second best time to act is now.
So we all have something to offer in these times of amazing transformation. And I have felt way more powerful stepping into action in knowing that whatever skills I have, whether it's coordination or just being arrested straight up, that being able to contribute at this time is a really powerful thing. So even if I feel small and I don't feel that I have a particularly articulate way of explaining why I'm out here in the streets, I still think that everybody needs to come on out into the streets together, and that's the way change will happen.